players. It's more about, how are they going to react to the mistake? Do they put their head down and, the team's down a player for 5 minutes until they snap out of it, that type of thing. So it's all lessons that I've learned along the way, and coaches that really took the time to invest in me as a person.
That's awesome. Tom, you're going to pull some of the questions out of the chat and have the people ask Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon, I'm just loving those answers for all sorts of different reasons. But so we're going to have Chloe Miller ask, no, I beg your pardon, we're going to have Morgan Frank ask one that her and Francesca both asked. And then Chloe Miller has asked one that we'll enjoy. So we'll go, Morgan, if you would just ask your question first, which for you and Francesca.
Who was your favorite player to play with?
All right, so now you can think about that one, but you can only take 5 minutes because I know you've played with a lot. And then Chloe. Chloe, if you would like to ask your question too. Chloe Miller, paging Chloe Miller. Hello.
Uh-oh, we lost Chloe.
How often do you practice?
Finish off your question though, because it was important.
Say how often?
How often do you practice when you were young?
There we go. Okay. Good job.
Great questions. First one, and the first one's difficult. Who I enjoyed playing with the most? I'm gonna have to throw it to my best friend on the team, and that'd be Joy Fawcett. It's unique in that we have so many fun characters out there, from Foudy being Loudy Foudy, no matter where you were on the pitch, she was screaming for the ball, whether she had 3 people marking her or not. But for me, Joy Fawcett, we were roommates off the field, and she was my sounding board, my best friend. And she was one of those that just worked hard, and more often she played behind me as the right defender. I was a right midfielder, so I know she cleaned up my misses and mistakes. But it's just fun when you have someone that you connect with off the field who, you can cry to and laugh with and really consider a best friend, and then to be out there and be a part of what we were able to accomplish on the field with them. It's pretty powerful, and memories that will stick with me forever. And someone that I literally just had a phone call with yesterday. She's road tripping out to Oklahoma right now. So being able to be on the field with a dear, dear friend is something quite special for me. And as to how long I trained as a youth player, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know if your coaches are on this, but not as much as you guys did. I think for me, growing up, I played basketball, I played softball, I think I ran track for 2 weeks, and I played soccer. So, had the fortunate of having coaches that respected that and encouraged that, realizing that each sport could actually help me on the soccer field. So that when it came time to decide, it was an easy decision. I knew that I played everything, and soccer was the one for me that when I was home, I found myself with the soccer ball at my feet. Whenever we went out to recess or PE, I wanted to play soccer. So it helped form my decision, and I never had any regrets. But, back then it was kind of the time of, you trained twice a week, you played a game on the weekends, or you went to a tournament on the weekend, and I think nowadays there's an awful lot of pressure on you guys. So I think it's important that you guys make sure you're playing for the love of the game, not because your parents want you to. And if you're not having fun, the minute you have some adversity, it's going to be hard for you to fight through that adversity if you don't have that passion and love of the game from within, and not because someone else wants you to play. So it's important to work hard. And I think if it's soccer, something that you can't get enough of, and you're out there training a lot, then, more power to you. But, make sure you're also enjoying the ride and experiencing other things.
I throw one more in, Brad, just because it when we had April on, she was actually our first guest. It was fabulous. Somebody asked her who her favorite role model was, and it was an interesting answer because we expected something different than we got. So Madeline, Emrikian?
Yeah.
Hi.
Who was your biggest role model growing up?
That is a great question, Madeline. Again, I'm old. I don't know if you can see my gray hairs, but I'm an old lady now. We didn't have female players to look up to. My role model when I was growing up was my big brother, Sean. He's 2 years older than me, and I used to follow him around like crazy. And it was street hockey. I was playing street hockey with him. Used to drive him crazy, but you know what? Every time it came down to picking teams, he made sure I was on his team because he knew I was going to tear it up out there. And to this day, you know, if I'm out on the beach now and throwing a football or something, people are like, wow, you've got an arm. I'm like, it comes from having a big brother. You know, I think he toughened me up because he used to beat me up a little bit, all in fun. But I know how to throw a football like none other. I know how to be tough. And for me, it was just, you know, we didn't have the luxury of the NWSL or a successful women's team. We didn't even have the women's team then. So, you know, we have the ability to have the Megan Rapinos, the Julie Ertzes, you know, the Christine Lillies, the Julie Foudys of our time type stuff. So for me, it was always drove him crazy, but my big brother, and to this day, he's still my #1 fan, and I love him to death. And it's actually his birthday today, so not that he's listening, but happy birthday, bro.
Fantastic. Gabby, Placi? Gabby?
Yep.
What would you like to ask Shannon?
Where is your favorite place to play as at all, like being young or old? Or
That's okay. You can call me old Gabby. I said it first, my friend. I'm going to be honest and say one of my favorite places to play comes from college and playing at the University of Portland. When I went up to University of Portland is just an incredible soccer community, and we had sellout crowds for our college games. And this is back in the early 90s before soccer, especially on the women's side, really took off. So to have professors and just people from the community watching, where, you know, you go downtown for coffee over the weekend and they're saying hi and high-fiving you and saying, oh, you should have passed to Milbert on that one, she was open, and that type of thing, kind of just really stoked my love and passion for the game. And playing at Merlot Field in front of, you know, fellow students and the community, you know, at a sellout crowd, those 5,000 people sounded like 25,000 because they were so passionate. We had the drummers and all that, you know, they ran the big purple P behind the goal after every goal. So that some of my fondest memories are definitely playing at Merlot Field. But in fairness, the 99 World Cup championship game in the Rose Bowl of a sellout crowd was also incredible. And it's hard to pick that one because it's really hard to even put into words what it felt like at that point to walk out there with my teammates.
Well, Lauren Zemansky actually asked, what's your biggest accomplishment? Is 99 would you rank that up there? Would you, there's some other things that go with that. Does Atlanta cap that?
Yeah, I'm going to say accomplishments in terms of soccer, because in fairness, being a mom to my awesome little son, I know that might sound corny to you young ones, but in case there's other moms or dads on the phone, being a mom to my son, who's just my everything. But I think what's interesting is when you think of the 96 Olympics, it's the first year that women's soccer was ever an Olympic sport. So that in itself is something that's truly incredible, because I grew up dreaming of being in the Olympics, and I had friends that laughed at me because soccer wasn't even an Olympic sport. But I always said, I'm going to be in the Olympics someday. And I said it with conviction that most people just kind of said, all right, we'll see. And I think every athlete dreams of being in the Olympics, but every soccer player dreams about the World Cup because it's uniquely ours. And it's just, especially on the women's side, it's that year that it just captivates the world. So they're both a little bit different. But I think the fact that the 99, because we started off, you know, really working hard, self-promoting the tournament, and to walk onto that field at the Rose Bowl in front of a sellout crowd for women's soccer, we knew that we set the bar, and that it was going to be a catalyst for a lot of what you see today in terms of the league and the continued success of the women's team. So they're both a little bit different, but incredibly unique and special in their own way.
Shannon, I had a follow-up question with that regarding the Olympics. Your path to get on that roster was a little bit different. And I think the tie into the current situation with equal pay and all of that and labor disputes, how have you seen that evolved? What is your take on all of that? given the perspective you had over both segments, the 96 and now?
Yeah, I'll give you the short version because I want to make sure I can answer more questions. But in 96, at the time, we didn't have a professional league. So the team had to go into what we called a residency period. And they would pick a group of 24 to 30 players, and we would actually leave our families, leave jobs, and move. In 96, it was to Florida to train together and create an environment where we could train at the highest level, because we didn't have a league. And in 96, it was right after I finished my senior season at the University of Portland. I'd won all the Collegiate Player of the Year awards and was playing with the most confidence. I wasn't cocky because I was never, and to this day would be a cocky person, but I was playing with my most confidence. And we went into the training camp to decide the roster that would move down to Florida, and I was actually cut. And I was completely devastated because, as I said, collegiate soccer had just finished. There was no pro league, and I wasn't ready to just go get, for lack of a better word, a normal job. So I was devastated. And I went back to Portland and talked to my college coach. Not talked, but I bawled my head off and cried and, said a lot of not nice things about the coach and how unintelligent they were, you name it. And Clive let me have a pity party, and then he basically gave me 24 hours to mope and feel sorry for myself. And he said, you will have another opportunity. And the difference is going to be, are you ready for that opportunity, or are you still feeling sorry for yourself? So I went out the next day and worked hard with him. And the following month, the leadership of that team, the Michelle Akers, the Carl Overbeck, Julie Foudy, they actually had a dispute with U.S. Soccer over getting paid, because at that point we were just per diem players where we would basically just get a few dollars every day to spend on food. We weren't getting salaries. And in all fairness, where are you going to find a job that's going to let you leave for 6 months to say, I'm going to go train for the Olympics, I'll be back in 6 months and pick up my job? So they had to take a second team on a trip down to Brazil. And my phone rang and they said, we're U.S. Soccer, we're going to call the players bluff and send a team down there. And so my phone rang and they said, we'd like to have you come down and play in Brazil. And my first thought was, this is an opportunity for me, but I also, these people on the team had become my friends and I supported what they stood for. So I remember calling Julie Foudy, and just saying, Jules, what do I do? I want to support you. So if you tell me not to go, I won't go, because I have that much faith and belief in what you guys are standing up for. And Foudy, being Foudy, said, Matt, get your butt on the plane. You deserve to be in camp. We've got this. And to this day, that just set the bar for the respect I have for her and Carla, our captains. So I went back in, and from there, not only made the roster of only 16, because in Atlanta we had 16 players on the roster, which is unheard of these days. Not only made the roster of 16, but by the time the Olympics started, I was a starting player. And by the time the Olympics ended and we won the gold medal, I was actually leading scorer for the U.S. with 3 goals. So the big moral there is, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have coaches that tell you you're not good enough or you're not fast enough or whatever it is. And when you come to that adversity, like I touched on earlier, if you have a passion and a love for the game, you're going to fight through it. And I easily could have, that January morning, sat there and just kept feeling sorry for myself instead of training for that month. And when the phone call came, I wouldn't have been ready, and more than likely would never have gotten a call back again. But because for me, if someone tells me no, or I'm not good enough, it kind of pisses me off, and I use it as motivation to prove I'm wrong. So if you have that in you, stoke that and use that. And so I was ready for the opportunity and did well enough. They actually had me move from being a forward, which I'd been my entire life, to a midfielder, who you guys all know do all the running, and running and I do not get along. But at that point, I was willing to do anything to make the team. So I switched positions and I just kept working hard, and had the luxury of Christine Lilly, the best left-sided midfielder ever in the world, to learn from. And that helped really solidify myself within the team.
Fabulous story. Lily, you have a question? Lily? Lily going once?
Yeah.
Hi,
So,
Lily.
hi.
Did you like to play soccer in the rain?
Hi, Lily. Great question. Here's a funny story for you. So I pretty much grew up in San Diego, even though I kind of bounced from coast to coast. San Diego has been home. And, you know, if we get a drizzle out here, it's like storm watch 2020 and the fields close and no one goes out to play, and everything shuts down. So my freshman year, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Portland, Oregon, but it rains quite a bit up there. And I'll never forget my freshman year when it was just, I mean, and it's real rain. It's not like we get a drizzle down here and it's storm watch. This is like legit rain like you guys probably experience. And I remember walking into the training room and I stayed in my school clothes and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, we get a day off, it's raining. And Clive came into the training room and he looked at me and he's like, what's going on? Why aren't you changed out into your training gear? I'm like, it's raining. And he just shook his head and he grabbed me by the arm and he's like, I don't know why I keep going to California for you guys. He's like, we play in this. And I'm like, what? I mean, it is pouring there. And he took me down the hall to the equipment room and he's like, what size? And gave me a pair of 6 studs. And I'm like, there's no way we're going out to train in this. But I got to be honest, I loved it. I loved the fact when you went in for a slide tackle, you got an extra 5 yards on the slide, you know, slopping around. I did enjoy it. You know, and it brought another level of difficulty to the game too, trying to figure out the ball skip. But I found out that I can play in the rain and actually really enjoyed it.
I was going to ask a question about Clive. I actually knew Clive from way back when too. Libby Yandek has got a really interesting question. Go on, Libby.
Sorry. As a former striker, do you have any advice for a goalkeeper, and what would I have to do to stop you?
That's a great question, Libby. And you know what? I think all keepers are crazy. I don't know why you'd want to stand in there and have someone kicking a ball at your head, you know, and have to come diving out at players' feet. So I think you guys are incredibly brave for wanting to be back there. You know, I always used to tease Brianna Scurry about, you know, she just, I don't know how she does that. So I think the best thing is just to, you know, trust your instincts, you know, just follow your gut, because the fact that you guys are going to come running out and dive at our feet, like I said, for breakaways, and want to put your face and body and limbs on the line to stop a shot, you know, I think just keep working on the fundamentals, getting your hands out. You know, I made a living trying to beat you guys, so it's tough for me to really say how to be a good goalkeeper. That's definitely above my pay grade, but I have all respect for you guys being back there.
Young Lil asked another question earlier before the rain came, but by the way, Cleveland and Portland get about the same rain here, so we're pretty wet too. One of Lily's other questions, which I think is interesting, was the toughest team that you played against, but maybe you can talk about the different styles internationally and how that becomes a real challenge just in the different countries and mentalities that come with that.
Yeah, and you know, that's a really good question, Lily, and I think it comes down to you know, we definitely had nicknames that I will not share with you for certain countries that we played against, but I think every team was a different challenge. Like when we played the Chinese and the Japanese, they were always so good technically. Their touches were so clean, they moved the ball fast, so we knew that we would have to be organized, not get caught ball watching, not get caught diving in, because if you did that, they're gone and they're by you in a heartbeat, you know. And then you had a team like Norway where they were beasts in the air. And if you were going up for a head ball, you just cringed because you knew 2 of them were coming through you. So against Norway, we wanted to keep the ball on the ground and try to take them out of their comfort level. And, you know, the same with Germany too. They were very physical. So, you know, with Germany, we wanted to try to move the ball as fast as we could to get them chasing. So, you know, that's where a lot of the analyzing and scouting and, you know, being able to alter how you play, you know, and in fairness, as Team USA, our first and foremost was always, we're going to make teams adjust to us by how we play. But with that in mind was, making sure we knew what their strengths were and not allowing them to get in the groove with, because you knew Norway, the goal kick, or if their keeper got it, they just wanted to punt it up as high and as far as they could and go battle for it. We wanted to try to play out of the back. So, it kind of really depends on who we're playing. And, because we played those top countries all the time, it really became grudge matches because we didn't really like them on the field.
And just Shannon, remind everybody how tall you are.
I'm a tall, whopping 5'4", 5'5" on a good day, I used to say. But I was fast.
And so one of my first people I met was Bates. And she's what, maybe 5 foot?
Yeah, she's a good, probably solid 5'1", I think.
Yeah, maybe in a good
and
day
Tiff Milbert, she was 5'2", but Tiff Milbert had that low center of gravity. She was going to spin off of everybody, and before you realized it, she had 2 steps on you. So, but then you got the Michelle Akers, who were just beasts. And, we used to be very thankful she was on our team when it came to the Norways, because it'd be like, Mish, just figure out where the ball's going and get there, because I wasn't going up for the header.
No. So Ali was actually Aaliyah. So thanks, Ali, for those two. And I'm going to butcher this. It looks like 2 sisters, Ananias and Anais. And this is a great question that relates to skill, because I know into coaching you'll get this question right away. Go, one of you 2 young ladies, would you ask that question?
How often did your shot change, or did your circumstances change your shot in the game?
That's a great question. And I was known when I was at my prime for having the hardest shot on the team, and my ball actually knuckled from the way I hit it. But I think, as you get older and, keepers start getting better and better, you have to kind of have more layers to that. So, it would kind of depend on where I was on the field. If I was outside the box, I was looking to just hit it hard and get my little knuckler on there. But, if I was off to the side, I wanted to try to bend it and put a bit of a curl on it. I used to take corner kicks for our team. And if I was taking it from the right side, I was just driving it into that near post. Joy Fawcett got on the end of one of those famously in the 99 World Cup. So it's having those nuances and being able to take those looks and read the situation during the games of, what's going to give you the best opportunity to put it on goal. So I think it's important to work on having that power, but also the finesse and the placement. That's a great question, though.
Fantastic. Here's another great question. Claudia Evans?
Yeah, my question was, have you ever gave up, and what kept you motivated to keep going?
That's a great question, Claudia. I was definitely very close to giving up, especially in 1996, and especially in 2003. I actually blew out my ACL. But I think for me, growing up, I was one of those players that kind of always had to find rides to games, and without soccer, I wouldn't have gone to as nice of a university as I did, because soccer, I was fortunate to get blessed with a full ride. So for me, it was more than just the game. It was the opportunities that soccer afforded me. So when I hit those lows, I just would think back to why I was doing it and that love and the passion. And for me, like I touched on earlier, having someone like Clive Charles, who was a coach that really helped me see the life lessons of teamwork and leadership and the confidence that will help you beyond the field. So it helped me just fight through those. And I got to the point where, okay, you're going to tell me no, then I'm going to prove you wrong, instead of having that feeling sorry. But that comes from knowing that soccer was my sport. I absolutely loved it. I still love it to this day. I can't watch enough of it. And really having that passion to not want to give up and to just make sure that I did everything I can. And at the end of the day, if I wasn't good enough and the coach was going to tell me that, I'll know that I would have walked away having done everything possible. So it just, if you give up, I think you're going to be left with just wondering a lot of what if. So work hard, but you got to have that passion and that heart for it.
Shannon, you've mentioned Clive a few times, and
yeah,
I'm getting choked up here because I know Clive.
Yeah, don't make me cry, Tom.
What did he bring that was different?
Oh, Tom, you're killing me. You know, for me, as I said, I had it was a tough upbringing, and soccer for me on many levels before I even got to Portland, it was a release for me. And when I was 17, I started being recruited, and it's all because my team that year, we went all the way to nationals. We took second place. We won the Far West region. We took nationals. And then all of a sudden I started getting all these phone calls, and I took a few recruiting trips, and the coaches were just promising me the world. They kept saying, we're going to get you on the national team. You're going to score all these goals. You're going to be all this, all that. And, you know, a 17-year-old girl out of little small town Escondido, California, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then out of the blue, Clive called me, and I'd taken 4 of my recruiting trips. This is how old I am. We actually took those recruiting trips as official visits. And I thought I was going to a certain California school, and Clive called and just said, hey, you know, my assistant coach saw you at regionals, and we think, you know, you could possibly be a good fit. Would you like to come for a visit? And in my mind, I literally thought, hey, I've got 1 trip left. I've never been to Portland. Sure, free trip. And then I remember he picked me up at the airport, and then he didn't talk to me the entire weekend. And I was like, what is going on? Because the rest of the coaches were just all up in my face the entire time. And about an hour before I was due back at the airport, I sat down with Clive, and he just kind of said, okay, you know, we've talked to the girls, we've watched you interact, we think this could be home for you. And I remember looking at him, and I just said, well, am I going to play? And he just shrugged his shoulders. He goes, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, where are the, you know, candid cameras? Is this a joke? And I said, what do you mean you don't know? Aren't you the coach? And he goes, yeah, I'm the coach. And I'm like, so will I play? He goes, I don't know. And I'm just looking at him like, who is this guy? And he just said, look, he goes, I know you need an environment that's going to be like a home. And we are a family here. I think you would be a good fit. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to play. But what you do with that is up to you. He goes, I can't guarantee you're going to step on the field every game and start and score these goals and go here or go there. He goes, all I know is I'm going to give you the opportunity. And I think if you work hard enough, you can make it happen. And I remember just like having all the air sucked out of me and being like, who is this man? And that was my first impression of him. And I bit my tongue from saying, I'm in, where do I sign? And, you know, best decision by far that I ever made was going to play for him, because he just had a unique talent. He coached the men's team and the women's team. He knew how to get the most out of all of us individuals as a team. He could switch from screaming and yelling and cursing at the guys to walking in and realizing if he did that with us, half of us would be crying. And he was just truly the father figure mentor that I always needed, and really just taught me to believe in myself. He helped me pick my head up and look people in the eye, to be able to talk in front of people, to just play. You know, and one of the things I loved about him is he got on you during the week, but during the game, he just sat back and watched. And he just had the mindset of, you know, his job is to prepare us for the games, and then come game time, it's on us to execute. You know, and he'll make tweaks at halftime, but he wasn't a coach that screamed and yelled from the sidelines. He believed in us. And I could go on and on about this man for hours and days. Nothing I say can do justice to the impact he's had, not only on my life, but people from Eric Winalda, to Brian Dunsap, to Tiff Milbrick, Christine Sinclair. You know, and ironically enough, about 2 weeks ago, I'm working on trying to get an exception to get him into the Hall of Fame, because he passed away from cancer way too young, and was just an incredible loss for not just all of us that knew him, but soccer in general.
Hey, you need a recommendation from somebody else, let me know. I'll write a good letter.
I will, absolutely.
Love that guy. Megan, let's keep it lighter.
Yeah, I'm going to cry here.
Come on, Megan.
Yeah, how do you get ready for a game?
You kind of glitched out on me. Can you say that again, Megan?
How do you get ready for a game?
How do you get ready for a game, she's asking, Shan.
Oh, ready for a game.
Yeah.
Well, as most of us are, we all have our little superstitions. So for me, when we were playing and talking national team level, we would pick up our uniform from our equipment room, we would get our game socks, training jersey, and game shorts. And so for me, my routine was when I picked up my uniform, I took a pregame shower, and as soon as the game shorts went on, it was when I kind of just started focusing in and visualizing, what I was going to do on the field, what I wanted to achieve. Bus rides, I either sat next to Joy Fawcett or we sat in front and behind each other. We always sat next to each other in the locker room when we could. And when we first got out on the field, Joy and I always took a couple jogs across the field and back together to kind of just get nerves out before we got into our, usual team warm up. So Joy was always my rock and someone that just really helped me, focus and be dialed in. So, there's a lot of superstitions out there in the soccer world, but that was usually my pregame rituals.
Casey, that was a great question. Let's go to a coach. This is one of those questions you might get a lot, but you might have a lot of answers for this one. Casey?
First of all, thank you. This is awesome. I was listening to a U.S. Soccer podcast last week, and they asked Kate Markgraf if she could take any player from her era and put her on the current roster. Who would she take and why? So that's my question for you. Is from your era, who would you take to put on the current roster?
Who did she say?
And you said her name, Michelle Akers, and that's what made me think of the question.
Yeah.
That was, because she went on and on about just her as a complete player.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's interesting. I think for me, I think of the leaders we had, and I think, the team right now has come a long way and they are back on a unified front. I think there was a bit of a time where there was a fraction between us old school players and the current group. But, I'm going to throw out Christine Lilly probably just because she probably still could play. She was always the one. I think she broke the beep test. They literally just had to turn the thing off because she was still going. The rest of us are like passed out over on the ground, and it just came to the point where you just had to stop it for her. But she was someone that just, was the ultimate team player. She wasn't necessarily all the one in the news all the time, but she was consistent, and you knew what you were going to get out of her every single game. I think she has like over 300 million caps, so I think she could easily step back in.
Thank you.
Yeah, you had a few in that generation too. It was special.
Yeah.
So, Leah, we've maybe answered this, but just so you can talk to Shannon. Prezenkowski. Hi, Leah.
Yep. Hi.
Hi, Leah.
Hi. What advice do you have for young players who want to be like you and in the Olympics?
Great question, Leah. My advice is to have the dreams. As I talked about, women's soccer wasn't even an Olympic sport when I was your age. But when the Olympics were on TV, I found myself glued to the TV watching Winter Olympics, Summer Olympics, and just saying, kept telling myself, I want to be a part of that. You guys have the luxury of not only women's soccer being in the Olympics, the World Cup, you've got the NWSL, and all the collegiate programs out there. So my advice would be to have those dreams, set goals, and you have to be willing to make the sacrifices to achieve them. You have to be willing to work hard. You have to be willing to realize it's not going to be easy, and get out and watch as many games as you can, but don't watch it as a fan, watch it as a student of the game. So if you're a midfielder, watch what the midfielders are doing. If you can get out to a local collegiate game or an NWSL game, or watching the women's team, even at men's games, watch it as a student, not just a fan, and watch the nuances of what they're doing off the ball. And just, if it's something that you truly love, just put your heart and soul into it, and don't listen to the naysayers. Surround yourself with common people that have similar goals, because then they're going to help push you, they're going to help you believe in it, and they're going to help you make it happen. And just realize that it's different for everyone, and whatever your goal is, don't let anyone tell you it's not possible, because it is.
Yeah. Gabby?
When you retired, did you feel like a sense of happiness or pride? Or were you still really sad to leave?
That's a great question, Gabby. And to this day, I feel a sense of pride and happiness. And what's really cool for me is in the last couple of years, my son's realized mom's actually done something pretty cool. Before he was like, Mom, why are you at my soccer practice? And why are you coming to my school to talk? It was a bit annoying to him. But, in complete honesty, when I first retired, there was probably a good 2 to 3 months where I kind of just hit a low because playing for 12 years internationally, you have this high of playing in these stadiums with over 90,000 people. You have this structure of, you get up, you have your breakfast, training, all the meals are provided, and all of a sudden I'm just like waking up going, what do I do? And you kind of hit this lull of what's next for me. And it's tough to really find that passion and that drive of going out and training and seeing your teammates and doing all that. So that was when I kind of really just delved in of who do I want to be now type thing. And for me, it was becoming a coach and giving back to this game because, as I mentioned, soccer not only paid for my education, but it made me who I am today as a person, as a coach, as a mom, everything. So it's important to give back and hopefully inspire a next generation to whatever the level is, whether you just play up to college or you play in college or you play national team. There's so much that this game can teach you to be a successful person.
So Shannon, a couple of the questions related to whether you're a lefty or righty or both, but I want to coat that into this because you said you didn't train as much as you thought these youngsters do. Talk about what you developed, if you could, and where your strengths were and what you think, I'm not very good at that, but I'm going to maximize this. Or did you try to think, I've got to get better at more things? What was your approach to that, and what help did you get from the coaches?
Yeah, well, I'm sure I'm supposed to say I was both-footed, but I wasn't. My left leg was, as Clive said, my kickstand. I think whenever the few left-footed goals I scored in college, I just remember Clive being like, see, it's more than a kickstand. So I was definitely right-footed, but I was beyond good with my right foot to make up for it. And I think for me, it's funny because even nowadays I'll go out to practices and they'll be like, oh, can you do this move and the rainbow and this and that? And I'm like, no, I was a player that I was either trying to nutmeg you or just a quick step over, scissor and getting around you because I knew I was fast. So I just played to my strengths of, especially being out on the midfield or up top of how quickly can I get by you. So I think it's important to really focus on what your skills are. You get great players that are be able to use both their feet. Joy Fawcett was, very similar to me with just the right foot. She would use like the outside of her right foot, bending ball to avoid using her left foot. So I think it depends on where you play, that you really need to hone in on. Some of these people that can dance on the ball and do 20 million different moves, they're standing in place doing these moves. So, what's going to be effective for you and where you play, and then just become the best at that. You don't need 20 different moves. You need a couple that are going to help you, because if you do them well enough, no one's going to be able to stay with you. So I think it's important to, definitely work on both feet. I definitely preach that now because it's nice to have those options. But you're talking about, I grew up when there wasn't this much pressure or, overtraining and private lessons and camps and all that stuff. We just really kind of just rolled. And just really work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Defending. I was a goal scorer. And funny enough, when I got to Portland, I was, playing down in California. I was that forward that was so fast. I just literally stood up top. The team kicked the ball over and I ran onto it and scored. And if I didn't score, I kind of jog walked back. But it was successful. It was helpful. Our team was very successful because I had a great group around me. And then I got up to Portland and tried doing that. That lasted about maybe 10 minutes before I got a good talking to from the rest of the team of like, you play both sides of the ball here. And in fact, the forwards, you're the first defender. So, that was my first lesson of, you actually have 11 defenders out there, not just 3 or 4. So it was one of the things that I worked harder on. And I think probably why I probably admired the likes of Joy Fawcett and Carla Overbeck. You had someone like Carla Overbeck who admittedly wasn't one of the fastest ones, but she was so dang smart. It was incredibly difficult to get around her. So defending was definitely, and especially in midfield, when you make that run all the way down and you whip across in, and now you got to get it all the way back and defend. That was definitely what I had to focus on the most, and became more of a strength as time went on.
I think we come back to Morgan, who's got an excellent question, because now you've come into coaching. I think this is apropos. Morgan? Got a US shirt on.
Nice shirt, Morgan.
Do you have any quotes? And if you do, what are they?
Oh, quotes. Yes, I was actually one of those. I loved having quotes. One of my favorites comes from one of my all-time favorite movies, League of Their Own, where one of the main characters is walking away from the game, and the coach says, why are you quitting? And she says, it just got too hard. And his response is, hard. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, then everybody would do it. It's the hard that makes it special. So that is something that always kind of rang true to me. And to this day, I actually just watched that movie again with my son the other day. And I just love that part. And that was my all-time favorite. So it's the hard
Shannon,
that makes it special. Yes.
One of the questions, if we dial forward now, that I'd be curious your thoughts on as you watch the current version of the women's national team, given your strengths as a player and now you're into coaching and how you watch the game, what player or players in the current batch are your favorite?
I'm going to be honest and throw out Rapinoe, and not just because she's a fellow Portland alum or someone that I know well, but just because she plays with such a smile on her face. She has that intensity about her, but she just lights up when she's on the field, and you can just tell she loves the game and has the passion. And every time she gets the ball out wide, you kind of get to the edge of your seat because something's going to happen. But I also am a massive fan of Julie Ertz, because she's kind of one of those that, maybe doesn't score all the goals and gets all the praise, but she's one of those, like, I would want her on my team in a heartbeat, because you know what, she's going to kick your butt during the week in practice, but come game time, she's going to do that to your opponents. And I think she is so solid and tough. She's the modern day Michelle Akers. So I've got a lot of respect for her. And that's not just because she's the new number 8 and has my number, but just because of her work rate and her heart, and she wants to play. And like I said, Rapinoe, you find yourself going, okay, what's she going to do next? And that's exciting. And also Tobin Heath. I think she's magic on the ball and undervalued at times too. I think when she gets the ball, she's another player for me that I get excited of. She's going to measure, she's going to go around, what's coming. So I love that they have that flair, and that they're playing with smiles on their faces and loving it.
And maybe a follow-up question before we get back to a couple of the kids' question. Can you talk a little bit about whether it's enthusiasm or intensity about practice and training when you're playing with players that are similarly motivated? Is it amplified? You went from a club to college to the national team. Talk a little bit about training.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, with each level, it obviously gets more and more difficult, more and more challenging. And that's where, again, it comes into, if you're not ready to work hard and make sacrifices, you kind of don't make that next step. And, when I left San Diego for Portland, I thought I was fit. And I got out there the first day and realized, whoa, I am not even close to being fit, from the speed of play to the level of fitness. And the same thing when you go from college to the national team, it's a whole other level. And, in fairness, for my generation, when we had our residency, some of our best games was when we had inter-squad scrimmages and we played 11v11 against each other, because it was time to roll up your sleeves. And, being on the right side, I was going against Christine Lilly, and it's like, this is my chance to get better. This is my chance to do something against one of the most amazing players of all time, to help me get better. And, you can go through practices and kind of look for, if you're doing 1v1s and say, oh, I just want to score goals, I'm going to pick the weakest person on the team. Or you can pick the most difficult person to beat and challenge yourself. And, when you look at it, yeah, you might have scored some goals, but did you get better? You know, maybe you didn't score goals going against the tougher player, but you got better because they pushed you around and they kicked you and they made you think more and they made it more difficult for you to get around them. You know, for me, that was always, you know, picking Joy Fawcett, one of the best defenders ever. I wanted to go against her because if I can beat Joy Fawcett, I can beat anyone in the world. And that's the attitude you have to have. You know, are you going to just survive within your team, or do you want to thrive and be one of the best? And that becomes from challenging yourself day in and day out.
Shannon, before I go back to the kids, just was there an age where mentally you changed and that was you were comfortable in the mindset of a competitor? Was there a time where you were just growing into yourself as a player, and at some point you said, "Okay, I'm going to be the tough player around here. I'm going to be the competitor"? Was there an age where that?
Yeah, I think for me, it came when I got to University of Portland as a freshman. I think for some of the current players, it can be a little bit earlier just because there is so much more soccer out there. But I remember, keep in mind, you know, Clive brings me up to Portland, full ride. You know, we get out there one of the first days that we had an inter squad scrimmage, and, you know, there was a foul, and I remember lining up for the free kick, and some person I didn't really know at the time came over and called me off, and I walked away, and I remember Clive stopped practice and he called me back over and he's like, what just happened? And I'm like, well, she said she had it. So I gave it to him. He's like, no, he's like, I don't even know who this player is. What's your name? And he looked at her and I'm like mortified. And he's like, I recruited you. I'm paying for you to go to school. Step up, put it in the back of the net. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, you know, everyone's staring at me. And sure enough, I stepped up and buried it. And then he just gave me a little nod and a wink. And, you know, he was the first one that really helped me believe in myself. To that point, I lacked confidence. I came out of high school, I was afraid of my shadow. You know, I was that kid in high school, the bell rang and I got up and went to my next class and would rather sit there and talk to the teacher for 5 minutes than mingle in the hallways. I didn't have a lot of confidence. So getting to Portland and having Clive really teach me to believe in myself and that it was okay to be a confident, strong, powerful woman really came from Clive and my experience at college. And he, like I said, without him, there wouldn't have been national team or anything like that.
And the fact that you were 18, I think, is a significant piece here. It takes a long time sometimes to just become comfortable in our own shells as people. So that's encouraging. Lauren,
absolutely,
please ask away.
What was the number one thing that drove you to keep playing even if you failed?
Good question, Lauren. For me, when I got on the national team, the number one thing for me that kept driving me was my teammates. And I think that's why I just was always drawn to team sports. You know, I appreciated the fact that, you know, you could have a bad day and you can rely on your teammates. And there's days that you can have a bad day. And for me, you know, it was all about those days that were, you know, we're home and we have to go train. And it's the last thing I want to do was thinking about, you know what, Christine Lilly's out there doing her fitness, Foudy's out there, Carla Overbeck. If I don't get my butt going, I'm letting my teammates down. So for me, I was someone that really, really thrived in that team environment, and just really appreciated the fact that, you know, like I said, Joy was the one for me where if she said you didn't cut it, you didn't do good enough, it carried a lot of weight. And you have to have that person in your life that says you need to do more, or no, you kind of are getting a raw deal, but keep playing type thing. So for me, that was Joy. And one of the reasons that she, you know, is still to this day a dear, dear friend, because I knew she would hold me accountable, but also kind of give me that hug when she knew I was getting the raw deal. But I think just I thrived so much on being an important part of that team and the fiber of that team that it kept me going.
Fabulous. I'm going to butcher this. Is it Tanisha or Tania, or is it something else? Taneha, please help me.
Who's your favorite player?
My favorite player currently on the women's team, it's tough to pick just one. I'm going to have to say, again, my top three are Ertz, Rapinoe, and Heath. But if we're talking locally, it's my son, Braden, who has now said he's the new number 8, even though he's just a little rec player.
Becca, you get to ask, I think, the last question.
Hi. So what made you so encouraged to like get on to the U.S. women's national team?
That's a great question. And I think, like I said, when I went off to college, this is back in 1992, long before majority of you were even thought of. We didn't really know that there was a women's soccer team. 91 was the first year that there was a women's World Cup, and I didn't even know about it. So after my freshman year at the University of Portland, I actually got called into a U20 camp. And that was my first experience with anything national team wise. And then that following year was when I had my first call up into the national team. And by that point, I'd seen the Christine Lillies playing collegiately and all those players. And now to be on the field with them was quite intimidating and scary. And it's kind of getting off track, but to be out there now with people that you were looking up to collegiately, it took a lot, and it wasn't easy. And I think that's where you see some players you see them come in for a little bit, but to have a 12-year, 15-year career like some people have had, and that I was blessed to have, really means you fought through a lot of adversity and really just bought into the team atmosphere and were willing to do whatever it takes to be a part of it. Not sure if that really answered your question.
I think it's been exceptional. We've hit our time, so I'm
already?
Just going to take.
You guys are great.
Yeah, and I think just again on behalf of everybody, Shannon, you're you're so humble and gracious with your time, and without your experiences, I think none of us have our experiences, and the players now don't have as many opportunities. So thank you for sharing and being honest and taking time to answer the players' questions, because it was fantastic and insightful. And I know Tom's got a few things he'd like to say too. So Tom, you want to take it home?
Yeah, it's you gave the same answer as April to the role model piece. And April, because of the generation she grew up in, she said, I didn't really have women as role models. It was mostly males here and there. And I think just the fact that we've got the audience that we've had is probably a reflection of history. So thank you. On behalf of the young ladies, on behalf of the game, thank you.
Well, I am incredibly blessed, like I said, to have been able to do what I can. So this is the fun stuff for me, being able to come talk with you guys, because I look forward to seeing one of you on TV one of these days. But whatever it is, whether it's soccer, another sport, or something, education, whatever it is, find your dream, believe in it, enjoy the journey, because if you're not having fun, it's not worth it. And just put your heart and soul into it and make it happen. So thank you guys for having me, and I wish you guys all the best. Thank you.
Hey.
Excellent. Thanks much. Stay healthy, everybody.
Yeah, stay safe and healthy.
Look at that response. How cool is that?
This has been fantastic.
All right. Thanks, Shannon.
Take care, everyone. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
What do you think, kids?
This is awesome.
Oh, the old Becca left. Who's that young man there? John Andretti. Are you junior?
What's up, Tom? No.
Are you the John Andretti that I played with at one point? Because you look like you're at 25.
No, no, we're actually not related.
Okay.
But you've definitely helped me out